Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. Appreciate both.
By the way, big game this weekend. You won.
I noticed Mr. Lucas
he
didn't show back up.
Didn't show.
But I'll see him later. So
Tell him I said hi.
I will. But I have to say it was a great game. They had the ball in our territory, less than 2 minutes left. We had a 3-point lead in what was then a 55-52 football game. So I've never seen anything quite like it. It was a heck of a game. But thank you very much. I can't tell you that I'm an expert on hydroelectric power. We don't have a lot of it in Oklahoma, as you can imagine, a little bit in the eastern part of the state, and nothing on the scale that you have in the Northwest. I am concerned. When I got to my office today, and we had multiple contacts from Indian tribes about this legislation, that they were extremely worried, and actually to Mr. Rush's point, that they might be heard, but they wouldn't have much in the way of input. And that they could be pretty easily dealt out of the process. So I want to give my friend, because again, I haven't read the bill. This was just like you walk in, it's your first day back, and all of a sudden, boom, here's this concern. So I'd like both of you to comment on it. And I want to throw one other thing out there. You know, I also sit on the Interior Appropriations Subcommittee, and I can tell you there is a sad history of ignoring what tribes had to say about dams, because we've paid hundreds of millions of dollars to take down dams that blocked salmon runs and things like that, that tribes told us at the time, don't do this, but we moved right ahead, we generated a lot of power, and then we had to come back and clean up a mess that we had made. So I do have a big concern here, and I want to give my friend an opportunity to respond to it, and then obviously my friend from Illinois an opportunity to speak to it as well.
I thank the gentleman for his comments, and I know his passion on these issues, and it's one we've shared on different issues over time, including the Violence Against Women Act and other things. And I know in the Northwest, we're home to some of those battles over time, and we could all learn something from history. One of the things we could learn is that when an agreement is made, it should be kept. And right now we're in a bit of a battle over funding for housing that was promised as a result of some of the agreements when those dams were first constructed, dating back to the 1930s. And that tribal housing has never been built in full. And that's something I think that this Congress should recognize was a deal's a deal, agreement's an agreement, and at some point we need to fulfill that agreement. Now, let me move on to this bill. This bill recognizes, we believe, recognizes and preserves the ability for Indian tribes to participate in the licensing process. And in fact, in some areas of the bill, we actually extended additional benefits to Indian tribes, such as voluntary funding to support tribal participation. We have some tribes that are supportive, some that are neutral, and some that are opposed. We did what we could to try and find, again, common ground where we could get everybody on board. We did not achieve that, but we achieved kind of a mix here of different tribes having different views on it. But I think overall our goal was to make sure they were included in the process in an appropriate way, and that in some cases we actually extended additional benefits and voluntary funding to support tribal participation.
Well, I know my friend has an excellent record on these issues, and there's no question about that, and I appreciate that. And I've not heard from tribes that were supportive. There may well be some there. It's not uncommon for different tribes to have different points of view, as you know. But I just want to note that I have concern here, and I am going to look at it a little bit further. I want to give my friend from Illinois an opportunity.
I want to thank you, my friend from Oklahoma, and as I have stated to you on many occasions, there are 3 states in this nation that are my favorite states. Georgia, the state in which I was born, Illinois, the state in which I lived most of my life, and Oklahoma, the state in which I served in the military. So I share your concern and your appreciation for the great state of Oklahoma. But to address some of the issues, the bill is structured is such that it overturns key court decisions that affirm the authority of states over FERC with respect to water quality decisions and the authorities of federal resource agencies to impose conditions to protect federal and tribal resources. The bill expands FERC's authority to intervene and override tribal, state, and federal resource agencies authorities under the Clean Water Act, the Endangered Species Act, the Historic Preservation Act, and many others that are the basis for conditions to be applied or renewed, applied to renewed licenses. The bill strictly defines licenses, processing schedule, applies absolutely no discipline to the license applicant, only to states and tribes and federal resource agencies. The timelines are set and enforced by FERC, and the time period designated in the bill are too short for comprehensive studies to be completed that will support strong resource and cultural protection. It's important to remember that hydroelectric licensing expand terms of 30 to 50 years and never truly expire. After the term is up, existing law grants a license holder annual extensions in perpetuity without even having to apply. The bill expands and alters the trial type. This is very important. The trial type hearing provisions of the Federal Power Act to provide industry with multiple new points to challenge conditions designed by federal resource agencies. The concern is that the threat of these hearings, which are time and resource intensive, will be used to get agencies to propose weaker, fewer conditions. And the bill also shifts the venue for these visions to FERC, a venue much preferred by industry. And lastly, Mr. Chairman, several tribal nations, including the Yakama, the Puyallup, and the Sokomish tribes have expressed their serious concerns about the impacts of this bill on tribal land and water rights. And Mr. Chairman, that said, I know that the tribal nations, the states, and others are deeply concerned about the provision of this bill, particularly and especially because it prohibits them from full protection of current law.
Well, I appreciate that, and I won't take any more time. I just wanted to note my concern, and frankly, I hope this debate carries out on the floor. I think it's an important debate and discussion to have, so I hope the appropriate amendments made in order so that that can happen. And it will matter to me what I find out, and I would welcome any additional information that either the two gentlemen could get to our office on this, because again, I do admit I'm coming to this pretty cold just on the basis of what I heard today, and I have enormous respect for my friend from Oregon and his committee and the serious nature in which they approach all their business. So I just this one's concerning to me. My friend from Illinois raised some of those concerns. So
Chairman yield.
I certainly yield to my friend.
I want to join in with the gentleman from Oklahoma and acknowledge not only what he has brought up, but also Mr. Rush and the confidence by which the chairman has in this. I've read pages 3 and 4 that detail much of the contact that we're talking about, including language that would require states and tribes and others to accurately or to identify as quickly as possible any problems that they might have in that delineation of that. What I would ask the chairman, if I could, is if he could consider, and you do not have to publicly commit to this today, but I think it's a request from this committee that we would request that you would establish within 2 years after the signing of this bill, where you would hold a hearing specifically to take in feedback on this issue from at least tribes. And you do not have to commit to that, Chairman Walden, but I would like to say that I think that would really be good. I'd like to think that what you're doing here would be in the best interest. But I will tell you,
wanna
year
get it
after
right.
year, I see people that try and roll our tribes that have our Native Americans, and there are lots of processes used. And I'd like to see you, as you fill out your obligations to the Congress, to hold a hearing in a couple of years and make sure exactly the same things that Chairman Cole and I talk about. So I thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And again, I want to make it crystal clear to my friend, I know this would not be the intent. I just know enough history.
Sure.
My friend cited some of it, to know that these things happen. And again, going through a consultation as opposed to having a role in the decision-making are two very different things. You know, there's too much history here in our country about, you know, basically, hearing but not listening and just moving right ahead. And again, we've paid the price for that ourselves. Federal taxpayers paid the price for that on multiple occasions. I've gone to these dams, and some of them in the Northwest, literally the year before they were going to be torn down, you know, having been built at great public expense and then removed because of what the ecological consequences were. And again, we were warned, at least I was told we were warned in those occasions by the affected entities. So I just want to be careful here.
Yep.
And again, I know my friend is very careful as a legislator and is always serious, and I know his record on these issues, which I value and praise highly. But I'm going to thank, too, my friend from Illinois for raising the issue, important issue to raise. With that, I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Chairman Cole. Ms. Slaughter.